Sorry. I hate when that happens. Oh man. I forgot. Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Arden, and welcome to Comic Island. Today we're talking about Future State, a cool preview that DC put out. I'm gonna assume a lot of you guys have this book and are like checking it out yourselves, which because it's free and DC has put it out. Marvel and DC do this every once in a while. They kind of put out little preview books and uh, other like I have one from Marvel that they also put out recently, showing off new artwork and stuff like that. It's right behind me. But this one is all about Future State, an event DC is kind of putting out that's basically dominating their entire lineup for February and January, featuring a ton of different stories, all taking place in the near to very, very, very far future. And there's a range. There's a very cool little timeline they even include in this preview. Overall, I do like this story, or at least the idea of it. It's all just a preview, but it's a very good explanation of that stuff. Most shops should probably have plenty of copies of this, so I recommend you go in and grab a copy if you can. Broadly speaking, there are good and bad aspects to this that I'll kind of go into more in depth. Thanks for joining me in stream, Raphael, Tevia Smoka, WTF Alt Delete, Bat Productions. Good to see some new and old faces. Yeah, Raphael, it's always great when you can join us in the stream. And yeah, I think on the whole, this is a pretty strong-ish little thing that DC is doing. The Tevia says, I heard some of these creative teams are going to be taking over the main book. Well, that's the thing I like about it. In spite of some misgivings I have about it, there's the strength of it is it's really just 25 miniseries, all relatively independent of each other, meaning that some of them do have little references to each other as they go along, but those ones are often taking place hundreds of years in terms of chronology apart. So they are independent stories, and it really is just got some covers there. We got a bunch of series we're going to be talking about, and you can pick and choose what you'd please. I've ordered a bunch of these, but not all of them. If there's something either you guys see on the side here, there's only a handful of covers I got, but or something I talk about later in the stream that you want me to review, now would be a good time to mention it, like during the stream, I should say, or if you're watching this after the fact, leave a comment. And but the crux of this is with death metal coming to an end, we kind of have a lot of the main guard. I like as far as they've publicly said, kind of taking a bit of a back step if they haven't already. Tom King is kind of doing that. Scott Snyder's kind of doing that. And it's not like they're going to be gone forever, but they're definitely like they've said they've been pulling back and they're kind of moving in that direction. There's others I'm suddenly blanking on. Jeff Johns is kind of already gone in that direction. I don't think Grant Morrison is gonna ever be like a big writer in terms of like a huge presence at DC again, because got a whole big thing going on. He's like 60, so I don't blame him for going in that direction. And this mini series is going to introduce a lot of new writers and artists to DC and kind of the big two in general. And it very much seems like they're going to be the next generation of people taking on these solo series that they're doing these little mini series for. It might not be all of them. Like, DC will kind of play with it as they go. You got people like Joshua Williamson, Ram 5 has already kind of been around, Tinian, and what's his face? Massey, I don't think they're leaving, and they're kind of still a presence, and they might still be doing series. But a lot of these new people we're going to be talking about, I think, are the future of DC, which is pretty damn cool. So there's a lot to be optimistic about for this event. And there are cool things. Like I said, there's let's go through the timeline first, because I think that's one of the coolest things. That's what first kind of perked me up a little bit about this story. So DC Future State timeline in 2025. These following stories take place: Arkham Knights, Batgirls, Batman Superman, Batman Catwoman, Gotham City Sirens, Harley Quinn, Grifters, Nightwing, Outsiders, Red Hood, Robin Eternal. 2027, Dark Detective, The Flash, Teen Titans. 2029, Shazam. So they're all kind of, oh, and then 2030, Aquaman, Black Racer, Justice League Dark, Metropolis Midnighter, Mr. Miracle, Suicide Squad, Superman and Metropolis, Superman Worlds at War, Nubia. 2035, The Last Lantern. 2040, Justice League. 2050, Kara Zor-El, Superwoman, Yara Flor, Superman versus Imperious Lex. That one sounds so fun. 2070, Superman, Wonder Woman. We'll talk more about these as we go along. And then we jump to the year 3000, where House of El and Legion of Superheroes takes place. 4500, where Swamp Thing takes place. 8220, where the Black Adam story takes place. Oh no, sorry, I said that wrong. 82,020, so the 83rd century, where Black Adam takes place, and then the end of time, the story where Immortal Wonder Woman happens. So yeah, it's a lot, and there's some crazy gems in there, but it's kind of cool how it ranges from the near future to a sliding scale, and then it kind of jumps to like far beyond comprehensible time, and I think that's pretty cool. Along with that, we have, as DC puts it, like we kind of find out what's happened to the Trinity over time. A lot of like, well, no, Batman is definitely going to be alive in the near future and stuff. Or in theory, they're kind of playing that close to their chest. But and Superman is still around and goes on to live for a very long time, as has been established. And then Wonder Woman is immortal, but the immortal Wonder Woman we see in that story might not be Diana Prince. Um, that's kind of gone out of control since I started reading the timeline. Oh no. Raphael says, "Do you think this will be permanent, or maybe depends on the sales?" No, I think the language of this book does kind of leave it a little open that some of these stories might continue. We have stuff like the Legion of Superheroes, which already takes place in the future. DC does a lot of those kind of stories, so I would suspect that they would probably have a little bit of wiggle room to do this, like you said, and they might look at sales and keep it open. But I think a lot of this isn't even an ingrained future. It's just sort of a fun exploration of what could happen, especially in light of what's increasingly clear from death metal going to be this presence of like an omniverse, where there's just an infinite universe again, back like before the crisis of Infinite Earths, which I think is exciting. And I think the greater lesson of future state that we should all take away from this is that nothing is fixed in DC anymore. There's an infinite number of possible futures, like this one, and they can definitely, a lot of these characters we are going to see more of. I dropped a name earlier that they kind of have made clear. Well, the couple, Nubia and Yara Flor, seem like characters we're going to see again. And I do believe there is a future for some of these ideas, because some stuff's taking place only in 2025, which is like predict like something DC can work towards in theory if they really want to. So if there are strong sales, well, you never know. Bat Production says the next Batman comic looks sick. I agree. That one I do have on order. And Tevia says, I certainly hope so, because Peter J. Tomasi is writing on Detective Comics. He might be leaving that series, if that's what you mean, in response to what I was saying about him sticking around. But I hope he's in some form or another, because he's a very talented writer. Raphael says... Oh, I missed whatever you're responding to, so I'm just going to keep going. James Tranmel says, has it been decided if there will be a new Wonder Girl or another Wonder Woman? Well, let's go into that next. So let's find that page. They have kind of different little features where they talk about like certain characters. So there's a page about Gotham and how after stuff like the Joker War, people kind of got disillusioned with superheroes when they saw all these Batmobiles and Bat planes on a rampage in Gotham City. And eventually they turned over law enforcement to private security, this group called the Magistrate, that has this strict no vigilante policy. They use face recognition technology, and what else? They talk about all this stuff. just technology and facial recognition is what John Riley, who's writing this stuff, says. Well, he's the one writing the new Batman. Mariko Tamaki writes Dark Detective, and I think like that might be the future of Detective Comics. Andrew Constant does Nightwing. Stephanie Phillips writes Harley Quinn. Jen Luen Yang does Superman Batman, and he's so cool. He did, I believe, Superman Smashes the Klan. Probably one of my favorite books out of like 29 something. Anyways, so the cool thing about that is the Magistrate is going to affect all the Batman future state titles, and we'll see how each of these characters deal with that. I think the facial recognition stuff, like of these cameras being everywhere, is interesting, and maybe like they can kind of see past the mask and use the jawline and be like, "Oh, that's Bruce Wayne," and but it's much more difficult for Batman to operate. An interesting aspect of this, if you look at the cover of this little preview thing, Batman's fully masked there. Maybe that says something. And they talk a little bit about how these vigilantes have to go more analog and rely less on sophisticated technology, and they compare it to like a caveman fighting like robots, and that's interesting. Not literally, but just that kind of like rustic, basic Batman having to go up against this high tech world, but because he doesn't have all this high tech stuff, the Magistrate can't like hack into him or that. Interesting. Um, Tevia says, "Do you think Future State will have an effect on any of these main books or any of these story elements be in the main universe?" Well, I kind of touched on that already. I'm just that behind in chat, but I do think it's possible. I do also believe that's where it kind of could just be like just sort of the side thing. But the side thing might be okay. It is also a little bit of a breathing moment for DC. In the wake of death metal and all this stuff they didn't anticipate, like COVID and those horrible layoffs that really hit DC Comics pretty hard, this gives them a chance to kind of take a breath, showcase some new talent, hit the reset button a little bit, just in terms of letting new writers kind of come into these series, do stuff like that, and give themselves a bit of breathing room. And I'm like kind of welcoming it. I think it's a good move. We've had a lot of series canceled at this point, like the Titans books. Several others got canceled in the last couple of months. I'm suddenly blanking on names, but they trimmed off their bottom like 10% of titles or something like that. So getting some relaunches, especially of stuff that are just pretty mainstream like Titans, would. uh, so oh yeah, so you were asking me about James was asking me about Wonder Woman, but we were passing the Batman page. I wanted to briefly deflect to that. But when they talk about Wonder Woman, they're mostly focused on two characters. Uh, the first one is Yara Flor, and she's an Amazon, but not from Themyscira, from the Amazon rainforest in South America, which I think is a cool idea. She's a new character that is going to kind of be introduced here. This is where I think it can have more of an effect on main canon. And the other Wonder Woman is Nubia, and she's going to be introduced in another series from DC's adult line by the same, or I'm not sure if it's the same writer, but it's one of the new writers they're introducing. So she's clearly got a future beyond just Future State. Didn't mean to use future twice in that sentence there, but I think there's a lot of interesting ideas going on with Wonder Woman and what they're talking about there, and especially the idea of Immortal Wonder Woman taking place this far future. And they describe her operating in Atlanta, which I didn't expect, but the way they were talking about it, it's like uh, she had like no one believes in her anymore, and it's interesting. Becky Cloonan is co-writing it with Michael W. Conrad. I don't know him, but I know Cloonan, and she's pretty cool. And as for Superman, so there's a couple of cool features. The first Superman title is going to feature John Kent grown up as Superman, which isn't like astounding. We've seen that in DC's, but it's cool. And he is going up against like a version of Brainiac, and to combat Brainiac, he bottles up the city of Metropolis and hides it away in the Fortress of Solitude. And the tone that Sean Lewis, the writer of that story, takes is he's like, well, sometimes new heroes make mistakes and stuff like that. So that should be pretty interesting. And as for Kal-El Superman, he is going to be out in space. He kind of like as John grew up, he would let his son become Superman, and in response to some weird cosmic threat that seems to be this sort of thread across the Superman titles, just like the Magistrate is, there's some threat he goes off to fight in space, and he winds up in this Worlds of War title where he's battling in this gladiatorial arena, and he looks cool as hell. He's got this race, like really simplified costume. They show it somewhere. I'm not seeing it. It's on the front part of the book. And it looks really interesting. It's very like, oh, here we are. Very simplified and like just a bare bones kind of thing. It's hard for you guys to probably see, but his S logo is like chained to his chest, and he's got uh, shackles around his arms, and he's fighting on War Worlds with Mongol, but it's not the Mongol we know. It's Mongol's son, who's also named Mongol. And it just seems like some pretty delightful fun. Mark Russell is writing for that, which should be interesting. And Marguerite Bennett is doing a series for Kara Zor-El, who I almost called Supergirl, but she's Superwoman in this story, you know, having grown up quite a bit. And she's running some sort of refugee camp on the moon. It sounds pretty interesting, actually. They kind of are playing up her more rage aspect side and how like she's kind of found inner peace in the future, but that peace gets threatened by some sort of external presence. It's kind of cool. And then House of L kind of, oh, I skipped over one. There's also, oh yeah, that awesome story called Superman versus Imperious Lex, where we go back to the world of Lexor, which is a weird bit of trivia in Lex's history, where he like lived on this planet that treated him with this respect and adoration that he always wanted out of humanity. And eventually he kind of screwed over Lexor, and they kind of realized he was the villain all along. But in the far future, it seems like he kind of got into their good graces again. Probably because it's just like he passed into legend over time, and now he's treated as this like god king on this planet. And he's sort of seeking to join this larger united federation of planets. And comes into conflict with Superman, but he's got like ulterior motives behind it. But I just love the idea of like Lexor coming back in this future story, and it leads to this conflict in the relatively far future. I think it's this one takes place in 2050, I believe they said. But yeah, 2050. So 30 years from now, and they have this maybe like final battle kind of thing. And then the final story that kind of ties this all together is House of L, which is it's kind of neat. Philip Kennedy Johnson is writing this, a name that should be familiar, some of you guys at least. And it's he talks about how he got to like think about how what the House of L looks like after like generations, and he got to work out this whole like what the next 1,000 years of the Kent and L family might look like. And I think that's really cool. This story, I believe, takes place in the year 3000, so he's being quite literal when he says the next 1,000 years. Yeah. So we'll get to see, like, what happens to Superman's ancestors, or descendants, not ancestors, which I think is really cool. That's, again, like, some of the Superman books, and one, I guess the Wonder Woman's kind of close second, but some of the Superman books are the most interesting to me. Now I do want to circle back to something a little earlier here about some of the new guys we're gonna get and girls, like a new writers and talent we're gonna get. They mostly focus on the writers and then just show off some of their new artists' amazing artwork, which I think is good. And then like Riley Rossmo's doing something, all of that stuff. But we have Jeremy Adams, who is going to do Superman Worlds of War. Black Racer? I don't know what that means. I guess he's doing one of the issues. Future State Suicide Squad. Oh, and the Black Adam issue. So he's doing 2 issues of 2 different stories. But him and Megan Fitzmartin are both former writers from Supernatural. Megan Fitzmartin is going to do Robin Eternal. And I think that's cool. I've seen almost every episode of Supernatural except for the most recent season, and I don't know how motivated I am to dig into that, but I've probably seen episodes they've written. And they've both written stuff for Justice League. Sorry, not Justice League. DC animated series. So it seems like a pretty natural choice. there's a couple of other TV writers here who largely have also worked on animated DC stuff like DC Superhero Girls. Tim Sheridan is one of them. He's doing Teen Titans and Shazam, the future state titles for both of those. Sean Lewis, we already mentioned. He and Stephanie Phillips and Brandon Easton and a couple others are all people who have worked in comics. So it's about half and half. A nice balance, I think, of writers from outside the industry kind of coming in and writers who have done stuff in like more indie realms. Sean Lewis, for example, has co-created titles like Coyotes, The Few, Saints, Book of Blaze. Stephanie Phillips has done stuff like The Butcher of Paris, Red Atlantis, and DC Cybernetic Summer and Crimes of Passion. Brandon Thomas, who's going to do Aquaman and Future State, the next Batman. The Outsiders issue is he wrote one of this, or like contributed in some form or another to DC The Doomed and the Damned, which we reviewed before. It was pretty great. I don't remember what he did, but so there's a healthy mix of talent kind of coming into the company. They all seem to be doing some pretty cool stuff. I mentioned Aquaman just now. That's one of the ones I'm most excited about because it features Andy Curry all grown up, and she's in two different stories. One a little earlier in her timeline where she's the new Aqua Woman, I want to say, or Aqua Girl. They cover it somewhere in here. I'm gonna have to struggle to find that. I don't remember exactly, but either way, it sounds pretty cool. Here we are. Aqua Lass, that's what it was called. I knew I was getting it wrong. And then at some point or another, I think in the Justice League story, she becomes the straight up Aquaman. Or Aqua Woman, I guess. And that's pretty cool too. Sorry I haven't been covering chat, but I'll have to circle back to that in a second. But there's a lot I want to talk about. One more thing I want to cover before I will do that, actually, because it's the last thing, and it's a real womp womp moment. Because we also have a story for Legion of Superheroes, and they say, like, given that Legion of Superheroes already takes place in the 31st century, Future State provides an interesting challenge for Dragon Michael Bendis and artist Riley Rossmo. That's a real double-edged sword for me, because I love Riley Rossmo as an artist, but I'm not a huge fan of Bendis. I read a couple of his Legion stories. They're okay. But so then there's an interview and he talks and he does his usual teasing and things. But whereas talking about like, oh, we have all this new talent, some of the older guys who, a lot of them I like are taking a bit of a backseat. And it seems like Bendis is just sticking around. But he is, from what I've heard, kind of ending his time with Superman. And I think might not be like the big future that DC envisioned for him. Like, because DC thought, like, I could tell, or you could kind of tell, but the way they were advertising him, that he was going to be a big deal at the company, and I don't think he's really come to do that. Now, it's been some time since I've glanced at chat, so let's see what you guys are saying. Tevye says, I think the House of L has a John Kent descendant too. Well, it would, and probably Kara, and any other surviving descendants of Kryptonians, I guess. Maybe there's something from Zod's house. It's not the House of L, but they could have intermingled at this point. My guess is that Phillips has thought about this and included it in some way or another. I'm pretty excited to see how that goes. WTF was saying Batman has 1,000 adopted kids. Let Duke take up the mantle. Damian can go lead Wayne Industries and run the League of Assassins. Yeah, that's a fair point. If you look at the thumbnail of this video, they show the Batman without the mask. They're kind of playing his identity pretty close to their chest, like I was said earlier in the stream, like verbatim. I think it's one of two. Like, it does seem to be a black gentleman, so it does narrow it down a bit. You were saying Duke Thomas. That wasn't actually my first thought. My first thought was Luke Fox, and I think perhaps Duke you made a better argument for him, but I like the idea of Luke. It's a little less, I think it's a bit more of a wild card on DC's part. It kind of has some interesting elements, if you ask me. But we'll have to find out. James said, I read the story predicting that Damian would be Batman more like Ra's al Ghul. I could see that, especially where Damian's direction goes. Heavy says, Teen Titans worries me because a lot of the Titans are dead again. Well, for now. Raphael says, to be fair, I don't think these comics will last. Yeah, like I don't think we got to worry too much about that. Anything like that set up permanently, like oh this character's dead or something. It's like I wouldn't put too much stock in that sort of thing. You have to remember it's not like oh this is the new norm for DC. I think this is just like oh this is a sneak preview of what could be, much like Future's End. And I'm surprised no one's really brought it up in chat yet because if anyone were to ask me, hey Arden, what's the difference between Future State and Future's End? I don't really know. It's kind of the same idea. The only difference, as far as I can discern, is that it's just like they're all going to be different stories, obviously, and there's going to be different talent behind the scene, which is different enough in and of itself to kind of be interesting. But also, there's no main story to Future State. There's just all these miniseries, the equivalent of Future and tie-ins. And honestly, that sounds a lot better. My biggest objection to Future's End is kind of its main series, as opposed to like all those tie-ins they did. So, that sounds perfectly fine to me. Uh, Tevia says, I can see Damian Wayne becoming Red X. He is in this preview, and could very well be the case. I think there's a solid argument for that about Damian. Baggy Cool says, ever watch the Teen Titans TV show? See, that's an interesting question because you could be talking in theory about one of 3 Teen Titans shows that I know of. The original animated series, Go, or the live action DC series. And the answer to all 3 questions is yes, I've seen them. I haven't seen every episode of Go. I don't really care about that series much, but I'm not hostile to it the way some people are. Sounds fine to me, Bat Productions, to your most recent comment, but whatever. What was the question again? Oh, someone. Oh, I forget what. Oh, the Red X thing, I guess. I don't know. That's going a little faster than I can keep up with, but that's okay. um, oh, the Teen Titans show. That's what I was talking about. Yeah, the cartoon I really liked, especially when it came out. I still think it holds up really well, like the original cartoon. Go is fine for what it is. It's just like a kids show, as far as I'm concerned. And the Titans live action show, I liked the first season and really was disappointed by the second season. You don't have to do a whole review. I've done that before. I've done it for both the first and second seasons. You can dig those up from our archive. Um, okay. Baggicle says, well, Red X has a Red X on his mask. I guess someone's explaining to someone who Red X is. Tevye is saying, I don't see any of these futures coming to pass. I think Tevye makes a solid argument there. They could definitely take elements from it. Characters like the two, like Nubia and Yara, both seem like possible permanent characters in some form or another in the future. The idea of like a real Amazonian being a Wonder Woman sounds really cool to me. And Nubia is already being introduced as some sort of character in their young adult line, so she definitely seems to have a future. She looks cool too. There's a pretty awesome picture. You're not going to really be able to make out all the details, but they show her with and without Batman's utility belt and Green Lantern ring. And it takes place so far in the future. That story just kind of interests me the most because of that. Or not the most, but like a lot because of that. Just all on its own. That idea of like, oh, like unlike every, like it's like the farthest end of that timeline. The Swamp Thing one sounds pretty cool too, because it's also pretty far in the future. And it takes place after like humanity's almost wiped out and the green has resurged on Earth, so Swamp Thing like rules over it, and there's these underdog humans that like have to like desperately try and survive against the green. It sounds very interesting, and the preview images look really cool. Like I love that cover. I always do that. Oh, I love that cover of him encapsulating this Statue of Liberty. That nicely kind of evokes what I just said about that series. And there's a little preview image from it. Looks neat. Heavy says, do you think Future State is similar to Future's End? Because personally, in my opinion, I don't want that story again. I just broadly in terms of the idea of it, yeah, like I was saying. think I've caught up to chat at this point, and now I've surpassed it. Shadowcatcher says, "Does that mean Alfred is coming back?" Well, yes, eventually, but I don't think right away because we just have started the new Batman run. So they're in the middle of doing a story arc that I might still even kind of be just resumed after this future state stuff. I think it's kind of leading into future state a little bit. So it'll probably just pick up after that because it just kind of started going, and I don't see them just derailing all of that stuff because of this. Uh, they probably have some plans around it, but we will probably jump back to 2020 after Future State. So I wouldn't really consider any of this ingrained in salt. And if DC has led you to think otherwise, they have misled you. But I never really got that impression from this preview book or anything else said about Future. Uh, they kind of said the same thing about Future's End. And Tenif says, super pumped for the next Batman. I wonder what the story entails and how the new Batman affects the DC universe as a whole. See, that's kind of gets into what I was just saying about permanence. And I don't think there's going to be a huge compounding effect stuff. Wow, we got a lot of people watching this stream right now. That's cool. Thanks for joining us, guys. I didn't really notice until now. We got a decent amount in chat, more than usual. That's for sure. Baggy Cool says, I mean, I like his suit. Oh, he looks awesome. Hey, you know what would be cool is like if this series just like takes off on its own, which I think would be more likely a permanent thing. This, or you could show up as a new character. Maybe we could start rolling in Batman Inc. stuff again. Who knows? I'd be very interested to see where all that goes. Now I don't know. Raphael says, I noticed a lot of new team comics have more females in the group. They're definitely pushing in a more progressive way. I think they're definitely trying to diversify their brand a little bit in a more organic way, so they're not like doing it all at once or shoving it in people's faces. So it's just like a more broad trend. They're definitely introducing more people of color into this series and story. And I think that's cool. Why not? Like, especially in the future. I got news for you, friends. This was the last election ever, like, have a U.S. majority white population. That tipping point happens in 2024. So that is their future. That's our future too in Canada. So what's wrong with that? I ain't got nothing. Yara's saying, Yara Flora, I think she will appear in the main universe because she's getting her own series after Future State. Yeah, like I said, that seemed pretty clear, and it also just seems like the coolest idea to me. I'm really curious how the Amazons of Brazil reconcile with the Amazons of Themyscira, and I'd be very excited to see that explored in the present day. So that is where more future state is going to be. Is like they're going to explore some things. The characters that get popular and stick out will probably take on a life of their own. There probably will be some kind of character that they didn't plan on to have a future. Not intended. But they could very well like go in and so like Spider Gwen kind of took off after Spider Verse, so they made a series after her. So maybe like one of these Green Lantern characters or some Legion character really sticks out to people, and that character ends up taking on a life beyond this mini series or a series of mini series, as more accurately stated. Oh no, it's great to have people on, Kenneth, and I guess I shouldn't be surprised. It's just a little more than average, which is great. I guess a lot of people are excited for Future State. Like I said, kind of throughout this review, broadly I am. But there's little things like I was saying about how I really can't distinguish it meaningfully from Future's End, and I oh, got it. A lot of easy ways to get shadow banned for silly stuff. But anyways, where was I? I do think like it's always great to have more people on. Oh no, that broadly speaking, that this will be a fun couple of months for DC. It's been a busy couple of months because they also have Endless Winter kind of going on. I already have the first issue of that a little earlier. Um, Shadowcatcher says the Joker War proved that Batman could not be without Alfred. I think it showed the challenge and uniqueness of it, but he did ultimately prevail by relying more on his family. But he kind of keeps learning that lesson over and over again. It's getting repetitive. Even Batman having to learn to exist without Alfred is not new. Alfred has left before. So, I never really cared. Like, that Alfred death was very hacky. Sorry, Tom King. Everything mainstream. I felt a lot of validation when we had Comic Uno on for that stream the other day, and she and Brandon, is that his name? Brant, had both echoed my sentiments of being very lukewarm to a lot of Tom King's body of work when it comes to DC. With the exception, we all kind of agreed. I don't think Brant had read it, but Mr. Miracle is pretty. But outside of that, no comment. Tevi is saying, I am still hoping for Wally's kids to form their own team with my boy John Kent Superboy and Damian Wayne Robin to reform the Super Sons. That'd be cool. That'd be great. Yeah, they should do that. That should be the new Teen Titans. What Baggy says, Wally's kids are back. And Tevi says, yes, they returned. Well, okay. They're back in death metal, but nothing's necessarily permanent in death metal. But I agree that should still exist. Those kids should come back because they're fun and give Wally his family back so he's not miserable all the time. Why not? Can we also walk back him being a serial killer? That would be great. Well, actually, no, he's not a serial killer. He's a mass murderer. There is a difference. Heavy was saying, I also noticed no Green Lantern, but the Far Sector Green Lantern, and you know what? I am fine with that because Teen Lantern was so boring. Teen Lantern? I don't even know that's in reference to. James Trammell says, again, please, what's up, Batwing and Signal? So that's the Batwing is Luke Fox, the son of Lucius Fox, so Batman's friend, who became the sort of technology-heavy Batman, or not Batman, but like vigilante and almost prototype Batman Beyond type character. And the Signal is Duke Thomas, and that is a character that was introduced a very long time ago, kind of as just like a citizen of Gotham at first, and over time he eventually got intermingled with Bruce Wayne's life and became a vigilante on his own. First as kind of his own self-declared Robin, and then eventually as a hero called the Signal. Apparently he has superpowers right now. I have not stumbled under whatever comic reveals or gets into all of that. But that seems to be the case. Heavy says, I also, you've covered that a million times, friend. I'm not repeating. I did, Raphael. So what'd you say? You missed my question. Of which future state comic do you think sales will be the best? That is a cool question. I think it's the next Batman. Because you kind of saw the reaction people have been giving to it on this stream throughout this. A lot of people have gotten really excited. And I think rightfully so. Bat Productions, is one of the usernames on here, but a lot of people see that particular book. I think that will be of interest to them. So that's my answer. I think the Wonder Woman comics will do well because they got some new and interesting things going on. Technically, there are a lot of first appearances, so in terms of sales, that's always a hefty guarantee. Justice League will probably do pretty well. I wonder if Aquaman will, just because it's so different and interesting. We get to see like a new baby all grown up. I like that. That has me excited for weird reasons, I feel, but still. Dark Detective will sell well because it's like the equivalent of Detective Comics, and usually Detective Comics sells very well. And then probably kind of on the tail of all of that will be whatever the Flash title is. Black Racer, I guess. That should be interesting too. I haven't covered all the tie-ins, but there's so many. We don't need to go into all of them. Because this book's free, especially, you guys can check this out for yourself. It's pretty cool. And it doesn't, like, because it's free, it won't cost, like, it literally won't cost you anything. And it's not like a long read or anything like that. Shadowcatcher, thanks for joining us. Oh, thank you for your kind words, too. I was just reading through your comment there. He's taking off. So I appreciate you joining. You were there, like, waiting patiently right at the beginning of the stream. So that's cool, man. Thanks for joining us for the whole thing. James McD is saying, is Terry McGinnis Bruce's son, or is that not canon? Oh, right. I don't know. That is, of course, definitely canon for the animated series. And I guess kind of they picked up right out where they left off with the animated series for the comics. So yeah, it would have to be canon. As far as it relates to future state, well, it might not have happened yet in the Batman timeline, because the Batman comics kind of take place relatively close to our time period compared to like the Superman and Wonder Woman book. So yeah. By the way, Raphael, I really liked your question about sales, because I've never gotten a question about that before. And I think that was a really interesting one. Tevi is saying, do you think John Kent modeling Metropolis is similar to Red Sun Superman? Because that's the last thing I want to happen to him. Oh, I didn't see your earlier question. I don't know. We'll have to see, I guess. I don't think so. They don't seem to be going for the same tone. Red Sun is so different in terms of what it was going for. The way they talk about it in this book, yeah, I think it's fine. Very cool saying Teen Lantern was the one from Young Justice, I think. Oh, okay. Yeah, Young Justice was written by Bendis, right? Or like the most recent iterations. So I skipped right past that. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was Bendis. Rafa is saying, I agree if Batman and Justice. You agree it's going to be either Batman or Justice League if they're good. You know, quality kind of is a difficult thing for comics to measure. That kind of will affect the subsequent sales, but most of these are only 2 issues long. But a lot of that stuff gets pre-ordered, so that's the kind of thing where it's difficult to measure what effect word of mouth would have. If this was a longer series, you could definitely see that, because there would be a steep drop off after the first issue or two. Yeah. Karsten, thanks for joining us, but I feel like we're wrapping up because I finally caught up with chat. James Trammell kind of agrees with Raphael. I also wanted to say thanks for joining us, James. You're a new name, but always lovely to have new faces in chat. Baggy Cool, random question. What happens to the original Titans? I mean, when they were Omen, Tempest, Arsenal, Flash, Donna, and Nightwing, because I was reading those and they were suddenly gone. Well, the story got canceled. Oh, wait, no, not canceled. Yeah, Baggy Cool says only Donna and Nightwing stayed. So the series did get canceled, but before that, the event No Justice happened, and they kind of broke up around that event, and then there was a new Titans. I'm working my way conspicuously through those books right now, so I'm not fully caught up with the first half of that volume where it's that team you described. So I don't know exactly what happened to them. I will say this, though. For all the hype about those characters coming back in Rebirth, that series, looking back on it, isn't great. No Justice and revamping it actually did a lot of favors in my opinion. Even then, it was. You guys need to stop apologizing for redoing questions. If I miss them, then I'm not going to go back and find them. And unless you guys super chat, there's no way to pin anything. So all good. I just say that because 3 of you have done it so far. Raphael says, one more question. Are you going to do King in Black? Oh. You mean this story over here? Oh, wait. It's not out yet. Or is it? I swear I got it already. Maybe not. Yes, I am. I feel like I already have the first issue, but maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, we'll definitely do it. I mean, the green screen's sitting on top of it right now, but I got this really cool King in Black short box, so I gotta review that event now. Plus, Donnie Cates was nice enough to come on our channel, so yeah, definitely we'll be talking about that. I still have to review the last issue of Venom Beyond, I believe. I think it's the last issue. But whatever, I'll get around to those eventually. Uh, Tevye confirms Young Justice was written by Bendis. Raphael says it started out really good. So it is out. I have it somewhere then. I don't know. Raphael is saying that box is awesome. Oh, it's cool. There's another side to it too. The other side's been on stream before, but they both look great. Oh, here, you guys can get a better look. I didn't realize my little image thing was blocking it out from your vision there. Oh, here, I'll show you guys the other side for a sec. And there goes the most plastic comic. Well, I'll pick it up later. Yeah, no, it's really cool. I had the Empire one still, but it's getting pretty full. And then I saw that at my comic book store and was very happy to purchase it. And then I had to lug it all the way home because I always walked to my comic book store, but that's a random detail. Person asks how everybody's December's going. Mine is chaos incarnate, but I don't need to talk about that right now. The good news is I will be well paid for it. So after that, things will kind of get more stabilized in a way that it's never been for me in January, and that's going to be nice. Raphael says, I would want a poster of that. I like short boxes because I have to figure out what I'm going to do with all these comics now that I'm ordering more and more print versions. Basically to keep my comic book store alive in the pandemic. But I think I'm going to end up with this awesome collection of short boxes. So I'm going to just start doing that. And if Marvel keeps putting out these event ones, well, let's just say I would really like DC to start doing the same. Flying Gander says, any Tim Drake stuff? I believe so. The Batman books are, they list them all. The Batman page, wherever that is. Here we are. There's the next Batman, Batman Superman, Catwoman, Dark Detective, Harley Quinn, Nightwing, Robin Eternal. But the thing about that is, I don't know if they name drop Tim Drake, but they're keeping a lot of names to themselves. So, and who's going to show up in what. So, like, especially around Batman. So we don't necessarily know. My guess is they're all going to be accounted for in some way or another. Some characters might be dead or something like that. It could very well be the case. So you'll have to kind of check out. I'd say your best bet is probably Robin Eternal. That would be my guess. Let's just put it that way. That would make the most sense for Tim Drake, but it could be something else. He could, well, I don't think he is, but he could be like in Dark Detective or something like that. There could be more than one Batman across different timelines, right? Like time periods, right? So who knows? Although I just have trouble picturing Tim Drake as Batman, especially any of the versions that we've seen. Heavy says, how do you feel about Naomi getting her own CW series? Well, hey, I didn't hear about that. That's pretty cool. I know a lot of people don't love CW, but I've always found them pretty good for what they are. And what they are is kind of a pretty faithful adaptation of Silver Age comics, sort of for better and worse. And I can see why people don't like it, but I know comics and I do. So I'm not really dead set against it. I think it has problems. Some of them really came to light this year, especially around Candace Patton. Really ugly stuff. And they need to work on that. But beyond that, they're a pretty ambitious group in terms of all their crossover stuff that they've accomplished on TV. It was genuinely impressive what they pulled off for Crisis of Infinite Earths. And Naomi is a fun character who would be cool in a show like that. CW has so many cool plans for shows that I'm looking forward to it. Because, like, you introduce something like that, and based on the stuff that CW's been teasing, that's like a character that can cross over with Green Lantern in the future on live action TV. And I'm all for that. I think comics kind of could, in theory, exist in a better world in TV because they can like explore more villains and act more like a comic book series than a movie ever does. It sounds cool to me. I don't know why. Like, it'd be nice to get more of that as we start to get some more of this Disney Plus and HBO Max stuff from Marvel and DC, effectively. And I am cautiously optimistic about all of it. Baggy Cool says another random question: why does the Trinity get so much why does the Trinity get so much focus in Justice League comics? Just curious. Oh, I can tell you that. Um, in the past, DC has definitely experimented with not having all three of the Trinity on their team and stuff like that. And I am sure they can show you numbers that very much demonstrate, well, when we feature those three on a Justice League cover, our sales go up. When we feature even popular characters like Flash or Green Lantern, those sales do diminish slightly. I've our friends over, well, I don't have any association with them, but the very good journalists over at Comic Beat have shown that even having Batman on a cover can boost. So there's your answer. It's a weird, unfortunate trend, but it's very true. That's true of us on Comic Island. I try not to engage in it too much, but yeah, I had that cool image of the Justice League, and I wanted to use one of them for the thumbnail. And I didn't pick the Batman one for no reason. Um, and it paid off. Like this is a pretty popular stream, so it is an unfortunate aspect of it. But I don't know what else to say about that. I do think it's a weird trend, and I've wondered in the past if it's one of those situations where it's like, well, if you gave as much comic book attention to Batman or to Wonder Woman and they had their own movies, put that much focus on another character, would the character experience the same trend and also buoy up sales? And my guess would probably be yes. Like it's a real cause and effect situation where one sort of feeds the other. Uh, and I think if DC ever wanted to change that, and they should want to change that because it helps them be more flexible and sell more characters, then they have to put in that level of drive and ambition. And they have in the past to a degree. Like they really put some weight behind Kyle Rayner and Wally West back in the day when those characters became the Flash and Green Lantern, in spite of some fierce opposition. So I'm not necessarily against that stuff in theory. um, K Wolf Moon asks, are they on sale now? No, I think Death Metal #7 happens in, according to this at least, January 5th. And then I think after that, these start coming out over the next 2 months through January to February, assuming there aren't any insane delays. And you can't fault DC too much for that these days because there is still a raging global pandemic going on. But January might be a different story. We're living in a world where that vaccine, just more and more, like, you guys can do what you want, but I'm going to feel a lot better when I am COVID immune. So, I think we'll leave things there. Thanks for watching, guys. That was a really fun stream. We got some great questions. And it was fun to talk about overall, but oh, that was like an hour. Okay, so that's a good talk. Not that I mind, it's just I've gotten complaints about the length of my streams, but I disagree. I think it's fun to chat with you guys a little bit. Plus, we haven't had a chance to collectively catch up in a little while, so it makes sense to have some questions crop up. So, Raphael, oh, have you asked why Wally West can't get his own series with his family? I mean, that'd be cool. You could even call it like Flashes or something like that, and be its own distinct series. That or your Super Sons idea was fun. Raphael, I'll do your questions before we wrap up. But says, for me, since I started with DC as a kid, I've always seen the Trinity as the best DC has to offer. The three are also different, yet come together for a common goal. Well, you have a strong argument for it. That kind of pushes against what I was saying, and I don't necessarily disagree. That's a good counter argument that basically characters like those three, or I was thinking even of like a similar trio, but maybe not the same level with Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America, who kind of seem like a pretty core part of the Avengers these days. Even though if you look at Avengers history, that's not really the case. But they've kind of become that over time. Same thing with Spider-Man and stuff. And some characters do seem to have a certain flair that no matter what a company tries, they'll always just kind of exist above others. And maybe you can't change that, or they shouldn't necessarily run away from it. I do think there's a way to balance things out. Sometimes you don't always have to have them in the Justice League per se, but if there's going to be a Justice League without that, then that's a good time to bring back a Trinity series. Because why not? They are valuable together, and keeping them separate or keeping one of them down for too long is never worth their time, really. And they always seem to feel the need to reverse it pretty quickly. I think for that reason. Andrew says, I love the grading the Avengers series. Keep up the good work. I enjoy the channel very much. I didn't mean to kind of accidentally plug it there when I brought up Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man, but it's a pretty good representation so far of how little Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man really are of that first initial run compared to some other characters. Uh, but like, it's not terrible that they've kind of come to represent something over time. It's just very interesting how that changes. Wasn't always the case. It's kind of similar to how the Hulk is like barely an Avenger in the comics, and it's so, myself included, people really think of him as an Avenger still, in part because he was a founding member, but just because of the movie too. Teddy says, I think we'll leave it there, but thanks Felonious P as well for your kind words. I already thanked everyone in streams there, but yeah, have a good one everybody, and I'll see you guys next time here on Comic Island.